Namaste students. In this video we will learn a chapter from class 10 political science titled Power Sharing. The chapter starts by discussing some developments that took place in two countries of the world. First, let us see what had happened in a European country, Belgium. Belgium is a small European country, smaller than our Haryana state. So a very small European country. Belgium shares borders with France, Germany, Netherlands and Luxembourg. These four are the neighboring countries of Belgium. Population of Belgium is just 1 crore, half of Haryana population. Haryana's population is 2 crore. So Belgium is a small European country with a very less population, just 1 crore. But 3 different ethnic groups live in Belgium, or Belgium's population consists of 3 different ethnic groups. What do you mean by an ethnic group? An ethnic group is a group of people who have common language, culture and traditions. For example, in India, if you take, Tamils constitute an ethnic group. Marathis, another ethnic group. Kannadigas, yet another ethnic group. So an ethnic group is a group of people who have common language, culture and traditions. 3 different ethnic groups live in Belgium. Majority community is Dutch-speaking people. They constitute 59% of Belgium's population. So majority community in Belgium is that of the Dutch-speaking people. They constitute 59% of the total population and they live in Flemish region, northern part of Belgium, Flemish region. The next ethnic group is French-speaking people, a major minority community. French-speaking people constitute 40% of the total population of Belgium. Majority Dutch-speaking people 59%. Major minority community French-speaking people, their mother tongue is French. They are 40% of the total population of Belgium. And they live in the southern part, Wallonia region. So in Wallonia region, French-speaking people are living, and in the Flemish region, Dutch-speaking people are living. 1% German-speaking people are also there in Belgium. So this is ethnic composition of Belgium's population. Let me repeat it. Belgium's population consists of 3 different ethnic groups. Majority community Dutch-speaking people, 59% of the population, and they live in Flemish region. Major minority community French-speaking people, they constitute 40% of the population and they live in Wallonia region. And a small minority, another minority community is that of the German speaking people, and they are just 1% of the total population of Belgium. The French living in Belgium, the minority French living in Belgium were very rich and powerful. So French were rich and powerful, they were educated. So they were socially, economically and politically ahead. But the majority community, the Dutch-speaking people, were very poor. They didn't have much political influence. Educationally, they were backward. You see here, minority community was rich and powerful. Minority community was educated. Minority community had political influence. Whereas the majority community was very poor, less powerful, less educated. Quite naturally, discontent started to emerge in the minds of the Dutch-speaking people. They started thinking, see, we are majority in this country, but we are poor. We are less powerful. We are socially, economically and politically backward. But the minority community, the French, they are very rich, they are very powerful. So dissatisfaction started to develop in the minds of the Dutch people, and this resulted in conflicts. Conflicts and tension started between the majority and the minority, between the Dutch and the French. Even fightings occurred in different parts of the country. Between 1950s and 1960s, several such conflicts started or occurred in different parts of Belgium. Belgium's capital city is a beautiful city called Brussels. Conflicts were more severe in Brussels. There were more conflicts, more fighting, more tension in the capital city of Brussels. Brussels had a totally different situation. In Brussels, actually, French were in majority, whereas the Dutch were in minority. That means the national minority was majority in Brussels. And national minority was majority in Brussels, and national majority was minority in Brussels. French were in majority, Dutch were in minority in Brussels alone. So in capital city of Brussels, the fighting and conflicts were more severe. So this was the ethnic problem in Belgium. Let us recollect it. First of all, I told you Belgium is a small European country. Population is just 1 crore. And population of Belgium consisted of 3 ethnic groups. 59% of the population consisted of Dutch-speaking people. They were majority. 40% of the population was constituted by the French-speaking people, a major minority community. And 1% were German-speaking people. The French were rich and powerful. The Dutch-speaking people were poor. Naturally, dissatisfaction started. Conflicts occurred, fightings occurred. Fightings were more in Brussels, the capital city. In Brussels, French were in majority and Dutch were in minority. These all would have led to a civil war, would have led to the breaking up of the country. But nothing happened. All these conflicts could be solved, settled. And Belgium even today stand as a united country. People are united. How could they solve all these problems? How could the Belgium people, Belgium leaders settle the ethnic conflict and establish peace and unity in the country? We are now coming into it. Accommodation in Belgium or power sharing in Belgium. See, the leaders of Belgium understood that there is diversity. And they wanted to accommodate all the people into the Belgium's population. They wanted to treat everybody equally. So they amended their constitution nearly 4 times in order to bring about a new arrangement in which all the people of Belgium will enjoy equal powers and live happily without any conflicts. So 4 times the constitution of Belgium was amended, and they worked out an arrangement, a beautiful arrangement. Let's see what are the important steps they have taken to accommodate ethnic diversity. First of all, equal number of ministers from both the French and Dutch communities in the central government. You know, Dutch majority, French minority. Doesn't matter. In the central government, there will be equal number of ministers from both the communities. If there are 10 ministers from the French-speaking people, there will be 10 ministers from the Dutch-speaking community. Equal number of members, ministers from both the communities in the central government. Second important thing, in order to pass some special laws, the support of majority of the members from each community is needed. Majority of the Dutch-speaking members in the parliament should support, and majority of the French-speaking people in the parliament should support. Then alone some special laws could be passed. Altogether majority not enough. It means that if any of these communities, 2 communities, is against a law, that law cannot be passed. So to pass some special laws, the support of majority of the members from each linguistic group, language group or ethnic group was needed. This is the second arrangement they made. Third important thing, state governments are made autonomous and they got many powers. That means Belgium changed from a unitary country to a federal country. We will learn in detail the difference between unitary system and federal system in the next chapter. So state governments were given more powers and they were made autonomous. Autonomous means they got independent powers. So in Flemish region, state governments were dominated by the Dutch-speaking people because Flemish region is Dutch area. So those state governments will have their own independent powers and they will have more powers. Wallonia region, there will be state governments dominated by the French-speaking people, and those governments got more powers, independent powers. That is the next arrangement. Next important step which they have taken is there will be a separate separate government at Brussels. Capital city will have a separate government. Brussels, French were in majority and the Dutch were in minority. And there will be a separate government at Brussels. In that government also there will be equal number of ministers from both the French and Dutch communities. French were in majority in Brussels. Then why did they agree for equal number of ministers from both the communities? Because the Dutch agreed for equal number of ministers in the central government, right? In the nation as a whole, if you take, Dutch are in majority. But even then, Dutch agreed for equal number of ministers in the central government. So the French agreed for equal number of ministers in the government at Brussels. So a separate government was set up at Brussels, and in that government there will be equal number of ministers from both the French and Dutch communities. Next important step, each community will elect its own separate community government. See, all the French-speaking people will elect a community government, French community government. All the Dutch-speaking people will elect a community government, Dutch community government. All the German-speaking people will elect a community government, German community government. So for each linguistic group or ethnic group, there will be a community government. And this community government will take care of cultural, educational and language matters. So they ensured that the culture and language of each linguistic group will be protected and promoted. See, French community government can take care of French language, French culture. Dutch community government can take care of Dutch culture and Dutch language. Similarly, the German community government can take care of German language and culture. So, language and culture of all the ethnic groups will be protected and promoted. So, this is actually the power sharing arrangement they worked out in Belgium. Let's have a recall of it. First of all, in the central government, there will be equal number of ministers from both the French and Dutch communities. Secondly, in order to pass some special laws, majority support of the members from each community was needed. Third important thing, state governments were made autonomous and state governments got more powers. Belgium became a federal country. Fourth one, in Brussels, the capital city, a separate government was set up. In that government also there will be equal number of ministers from French and Dutch communities. And finally, each community will elect its own separate community government. Community government will look into cultural, educational and language matters. So this is actually the power sharing arrangement they worked out in Belgium. Now, what were the advantages of this power sharing? In what way power sharing benefited? They have shared power between the major linguistic groups, major ethnic groups. In what way it helped Belgium? First of all, it avoided social conflicts, the fightings between the Dutch and the French came to an end. Now all are happy. So a civil war did not take place. Civil war means a war between two groups of people in the same country. No civil war occurred. Country did not break up. Unity of the country was strengthened. So power sharing benefited Belgium. Belgium continued to be a powerful country, a prosperous country, a united country without any fighting, without any conflicts. So power sharing benefited Belgium. I think the story of Belgium is clear to you. Now let us go on to the developments that took place in an Asian country, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, as you know, is an island nation located just south of Tamil Nadu. Sri Lanka is also a small country with just 2 crore population. The total population is 2 crore, equal to the population of Haryana. So our southern neighbor, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's population consisted of 2 different ethnic groups. One is the Sinhala speaking people and the other one is Tamil speaking people. So 2 different ethnic groups are living in Sri Lanka. One is the Sinhala speaking people. They constitute 74% of the total population of Sri Lanka. So a majority community, a big majority, 74%. Tamils constitutes 18% of the total population of Sri Lanka, minority community. And Tamils are divided into 2 different groups. Tamils are divided into 2 different groups, Sri Lankan Tamils and Indian Tamils. What is the difference between Sri Lankan Tamils and Indian Tamils? Sri Lankan Tamils are the people who have been living in Sri Lanka right from the ancient days. Some studies even show that even before Sinhalas came to Sri Lanka, Tamils were living there. So they have been living right from the ancient periods in Sri Lanka. They are called Sri Lankan Tamils. They have their own culture and traditions. They are 13% of total Sri Lankan population. Another Tamil group is Indian Tamils. Who are these Indian Tamils? See, these Indian Tamils went to Sri Lanka during the British period to work in the tea plantations. India and Sri Lanka both were English colonies. So from India, from Tamil Nadu, large number of workers were taken to Sri Lanka to work in the tea plantations. And their new generation is actually Indian Tamils. So Tamils constituted 18%, and Tamils were again divided into Sri Lankan Tamils and the Indian Tamils. 13% Sri Lankan Tamils, 5% Indian Tamils, altogether 18%. Sinhalas were in majority, 74%, a bigger majority. If you take religious division, Sinhalas were mostly Buddhists. They were the followers of Buddhism. From India, Buddhism reached Sri Lanka during the period of Ashoka the Great. So Sinhalas are mostly Buddhists. Among the Tamils, majority are Hindus and there are some Muslims also. So Tamils were either Hindus or Muslims. 7% of the population were Christians. And Christians were from both the communities. Some were Sinhalas and some were Tamils. So this is a religious composition. So majority religion was actually Buddhism, because Sinhalas were mostly Buddhists. 1948, Sri Lanka got freedom. 1 year after India won freedom. After Sri Lanka got freedom, a democratically elected government came to power in Sri Lanka. A democratically elected government. But unfortunately, that government was a Sinhala dominated government. A Sinhala party won the election and they formed a government. Almost all the ministers were Sinhala speaking people. This government started following a majoritarian policy. What do you mean by majoritarian policy? A policy that give privileges, special rights, special considerations to majority community and discriminating against a minority community. Such a government we call majoritarian government. So in Sri Lanka, a majoritarian government started following a majoritarian policy. They did not treat all the citizens equally. They wanted to give special rights, special privileges, special protection to Sinhala speaking people, and they wanted to treat Tamil speaking people badly. Let us now see what were the important majoritarian measures taken by the new government in Sri Lanka. 1956, they passed an act, a law. And under that act, Sinhala became the only official language of Sri Lanka. Tamil was not given any status. Official language means all government work will be done only in Sinhala. So Tamil people, if they want to get anything done from the government, or if they want to get government job, they have to learn Sinhala language. Because Sinhala became the official language of Sri Lanka. No status for Tamil. Then Sinhala speakers are given preference in government jobs and university positions. In government job, they would give first preference to the Sinhala speaking people. In university positions, professor, lecturer post and other important posts. In the universities, Sinhalas were given preference. Tamils were discriminated against. Buddhism was declared as the state religion, and government started promoting Buddhism. They made a constitutional amendment in order to make Buddhism the state religion, and government started promoting Buddhism. Tamils religions, Hinduism and Islam were not given any importance. So Tamils did not enjoy any political rights and they were discriminated against. So we can say that Tamils were treated as second class citizens. So these were the majoritarian measures, Sinhala became the only official language. Sinhala speaking people got preference in government jobs and university positions. Buddhism became the state religion. Government started promoting Buddhism. No status for Tamil. Tamils, it was difficult to get government job or university positions. No political rights. So Tamils were discriminated against. They were treated badly. Tamils began to feel that they are treated as second class citizens. And Sinhala dominated political parties did not take any step to help the Tamils. So gradually Tamils started forming their own political organizations. They started to organize themselves. And they put forward some demands. Their first demand was Tamil should also be accepted as an official language along with the Sinhalas. Along with the Sinhala, Tamil should also be given official language status. And they demanded equal educational and job opportunities for all the citizens, irrespective of their language. All Sri Lankan citizens should be equally treated for government jobs and university positions. Thirdly, they demanded autonomy to Tamil majority areas. The state governments in Tamil majority areas should get more independent powers. That means they demanded a federal system. Later, they started demanding a separate state called Tamil Eelam. So these were the important demands raised by the Sri Lankan Tamils. Official language status for Tamil, equal treatment of Tamils and Sinhalas for education and employment, autonomy to Tamil majority area, and later they demanded a separate state called Tamil Eelam. I told you they formed their own political organizations and raised their demands. But unfortunately, their demands were not accepted by the government. Government continued with the majoritarian measures. So gradually what happened? Some extremist groups emerged among the Tamils. Some terrorist groups emerged among the Tamils. And finally, a very big terrorist organization called LTTE was formed, Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. They demanded a separate Tamil nation in Sri Lanka. They demanded Tamil Eelam. So Tamil Eelam was demanded by Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. So gradually a war started in Sri Lanka. A civil war started in Sri Lanka. I told you what is a civil war. A war between two groups within the country. Civil war started with the LTTE on one side under Veluppillai Prabhakaran and Sri Lankan government on the other side. So civil war started. Large number of people got killed. War is always destructive. No one wins a war. No one wins a war. All are losers. Several people were killed. Many people had to go out of the country as refugees. Large number of Sri Lankan Tamils had to come to India and live in refugee camps. Properties were destroyed. Sri Lanka's economic progress was badly affected. 2009 war came to an end with the defeat of LTTE. So civil war came to an end. But even today, the distrust between the Tamils and Sinhalas continues in Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka was not willing to share power. If Sinhalas were ready to share power with the Tamils, they could have easily settled the ethnic problem as the Belgian leaders did. But unfortunately, the Sri Lankan government was not willing for that. So Sri Lanka was very badly affected because of that. Civil war caused a lot of damages to Sri Lankan people. Sri Lanka's economic progress was badly affected. Dear students, we have seen two different cases. One that of Sri Lanka and the other that of Belgium. Let us now have a comparison of Sri Lanka and Belgium. We know Sri Lanka followed majoritarian measures. They wanted to establish Sinhala domination. Majoritarian measures in order to establish Sinhala domination. Whereas Belgium accommodated diversities. They wanted all the ethnic groups to be a part of their population. They treated all the groups equally. Then Sri Lanka was not willing to share power among different social groups. Whereas in Belgium, beautifully they shared power. Conflict started in Sri Lanka, but all conflicts were settled in Belgium. Civil war occurred in Sri Lanka, no civil war in Belgium. Sri Lanka's unity got affected, Sri Lanka's progress got affected. Sri Lanka suffered heavy damages, but Belgium, people even today stand united and prosperous. From this, we understand the importance of power sharing. Power sharing is important due to two reasons. One moral reason and another one prudential reason. Let us first see what is moral reason. See, what is the meaning of democracy actually? Democracy means power sharing. Democracy spirit is power sharing. Democracy, power should be shared among all the people. So all social groups must get a share of power. Then only it can be called democracy. If power is not shared among different ethnic groups, if one group is discriminated against, if one group is treated badly, if one group does not enjoy rights, it cannot be called democracy at all. This is the moral reason for power sharing. Let's now go on to prudential reason. See, power sharing helps to reduce conflicts between social groups. We have seen Belgium could avoid social conflicts, whereas in Sri Lanka, social conflicts led to civil war. So power sharing will help us to avoid social conflicts. Political stability will be established. Unity will be strengthened. Civil war will not take place. Even for majority it is good because everybody needs peace and security. Whether you are majority or minority, you want to live peacefully. Correct, no? You may be a majority person, but still you don't want conflicts. Because only if there is peace and security, you can live properly. So that is the prudential reason for power sharing. So power sharing is desirable. It's very, very important. Let us now see different forms of power sharing in modern democracies. How is power shared among different social groups in a democratic country? First one, power sharing among different organs of government. You know, a government can be divided into three organs: legislature, executive, and the judiciary. Legislature makes laws, executive implement the laws, judiciary settle disputes. Here you can see some power, lawmaking power is with the legislature, execution of laws, that power is with executive. Settling the disputes, that power is with the judiciary. This is what we call horizontal distribution of power, because all these three are at the same level. Legislature, executive, judiciary, all are at the same level. Power is divided among these three. And if one organ goes wrong, the other organ can correct it. So there is a balance of power. This is what we call the system of checks and balances. For example, Bombay High Court ordered Maharashtra government to take steps in order to improve the condition of street children. So Maharashtra government was not taking enough steps to help the street children, so Bombay High Court gave an order. So Maharashtra government, that is executive's mistake, it was pointed out by the judiciary, and judiciary asked the executive to take steps. So each organ is checking the other organ. That is why we call it a system of checks and balances. So power sharing between different organs of government, that is what we call horizontal distribution of power. Next one is power is shared among governments at different levels. See, in a federal country, for example India, power is shared between two or more sets of governments. One at the center, other at the state level. There can be local governments also. This we call vertical division of power. India, some powers are with the central government. Some powers are with the state government. Some powers are with the local government. Constitution is dividing power between central and state governments. This we call vertical division of power. Union government, state government, local government. Vertical division of power. Next is power is shared among different social groups. See, power can be shared between different social groups like religious and linguistic groups. For example, community government in Belgium. In India, to help weaker sections of the society like scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, seats are reserved for them in legislature because we want to give power to them also. So power can be shared among different social groups. Next is power is shared between political parties, pressure groups and movements. In a democracy, citizens have the freedom to choose the government. We select the government in an election. So there will be competition between political parties in an election. So power does not remain in the hands of one party. Say Tamil Nadu, if you take some years, if AIDMK rules the state, next time it may be DMK, then it may be AIDMK. Or in the center, if you take, earlier Congress was ruling, now BJP is ruling. So power does not remain in the hands of one party. People will decide which party must have a power. Interest groups like trade unions, doctors' organizations, they also influence the government and they too get some share of power. So this is what we call power sharing between different political parties, pressure groups and the movement. So forms of power sharing, if you take, 4 different forms of power sharing are there. First one, among different organs of government like legislature, executive and judiciary. Second one, among governments at different levels. Third one, different social groups, religious and linguistic groups. And finally, power sharing among different political parties, pressure groups and the movements. So that's all in the chapter power sharing. I hope the chapter is clear to you. Thank you very much.